It was late, but the city streets still glimmered under the pale yellow glow of streetlights. A gentle drizzle made the shadows of trees dance on the damp pavement. Olivia Wilson walked briskly, her heart brimming with joy after her first ever solo performance at the Madison Concert Hall. Her pristine white dress fluttered softly with every step, reflecting the faint glow of the streetlights. Clutched tightly in her hand was the program for the concert, proof of her hard work and accomplishment. 16 years old and already performing Chopin before a real audience. The thought made her smile widen despite the chill in the air. Olivia took a deep breath. Though the evening was cool, she felt warm inside. The applause of the audience still echoed in her mind, and the melodies of Chopin lingered as if her fingertips were still dancing across the keys. Each step she took on the empty street felt like she was still gliding on stage. Pride sparkled in her eyes, not just for her achievement, but for the praise of her father, Marcus Wilson, who had always been her greatest source of encouragement. "My little Mozart," he had called her after the performance, his eyes shining with pride as he hugged her. "You filled that hall with magic tonight." Before she left home that morning, Marcus had carefully braided her hair into intricate but elegant patterns, something he always did for special occasions since her mother had passed away 3 years ago. "This hair is your crown, Olivia," he said, his eyes filled with love. "Tonight, you'll be the brightest star." His fingers had moved with surprising gentleness for such a strong man, weaving each strand with care and precision. For Olivia, the braids were more than a hairstyle, they were a symbol of his love and dedication to her. She had looked in the mirror and smiled, feeling like a princess. In that moment, her nervousness about the performance had melted away. If her father believed in her this much, how could she fail? The concert had gone better than she dared to hope. Professor Jenkins had nodded approvingly as she took the stage, a rare gesture from the stern instructor. When her fingers touched the keys, the world had fallen away. There was only Olivia and the music, flowing through her like a living thing. When she finished her final piece, a challenging Chopin nocturne, the hall had erupted in applause. She had bowed, heart racing, cheeks flushed with triumph. Among the crowd, her father stood tall, clapping with unrestrained enthusiasm, his face illuminated with joy. Now, walking home, Olivia replayed those precious moments in her mind. The rain began to fall a little harder, but she didn't mind. Nothing could dampen her spirits tonight. She was only a few blocks from home now, eager to tell her father every detail of the evening again, how the acoustics of the hall enhanced the lower notes, how she'd recovered smoothly from that tiny slip in the second piece, how the audience had fallen completely silent during her favorite passage. Maple Street was quiet at this hour. Most windows were dark, families already settled in for the night. The wet pavement reflected the streetlights like a mirror, creating an almost magical atmosphere. Olivia hummed softly, matching her steps to the rhythm of the nocturne. She wrapped her light jacket tighter around her shoulders. The rain was starting to soak through, but she wouldn't let it bother her. Tonight was perfect, rain and all. She thought about the hot chocolate her father would make when she got home, their tradition after every performance, with marshmallows and a hint of cinnamon, just the way they both liked it. The braids her father had so carefully crafted that morning now felt heavy with rainwater, but she wore them proudly. Each twist and curl represented hours of practice, years of lessons, and a lifetime of her father's support. Marcus had learned to braid her hair when she was just 5 years old, after watching countless tutorials online. A FBI agent can learn anything, he joked, but his dedication to mastering this skill for his daughter was no laughing matter. As she turned the corner onto Elm Street, just 2 blocks from their modest home, Olivia felt a strange sense of peace. Despite the rain, despite the late hour, despite the solitude of her walk, She felt safe, protected, as if her father's love surrounded her like an invisible shield. Little did she know that this beautiful moment, this pinnacle of achievement and joy, was about to collide with prejudice and cruelty. The peaceful bubble of her perfect evening was about to burst in the most painful way imaginable. The beautiful dream was soon overshadowed by dark reality when a patrol car quietly rolled up behind her. The flashing red and blue lights pierced the dim glow of Elm Street, casting eerie shadows that danced across the wet pavement. Olivia noticed the sound of the approaching engine, and a hint of unease crept into her heart. She wasn't doing anything wrong, just walking home after her concert. Maybe the officer needed to get past her for some emergency? She stepped closer to the edge of the sidewalk, making way for the patrol car to pass. But the car didn't pass. Instead, it slowed down, matching her pace for a moment before the lights began to flash. The bubble of joy that had surrounded Olivia began to tremble, threatening to pop as confusion and the first threads of anxiety wove their way into her thoughts. Why would the police be stopping her? She was just a girl walking home from a concert, her concert program still clutched in her hand like a precious treasure. She had her ID in her small backpack, just as her father had always instructed her to carry when she was out alone. Always be prepared, always be polite, and always remember who you are, Marcus had told her countless times. The memory of his words steadied her nerves slightly as the patrol car came to a complete stop behind her. What Olivia couldn't know was that this moment would change everything for her, for the officer in that car, and for her father's dangerous undercover mission. The ripples from this encounter would soon grow into waves that would crash through multiple lives, leaving nothing unchanged in their wake. Behind the wheel of the patrol car was Officer Rebecca Hudson, a 43-year-old policewoman with 15 years of experience on the streets of Westville. Rebecca had just finished a long, grueling shift, one that had stretched far beyond her scheduled hours due to a shortage of officers and an abundance of calls. The fatigue made her more irritable than usual. Her back ached from sitting in the patrol car for so long, and a dull headache pulsed behind her eyes. She should have been heading back to the station to clock out, but something caught her attention as she drove down Elm Street, a young black girl in a white dress with elaborately braided hair, walking alone at nearly p.m. Rebecca glanced through the windshield, her eyes narrowing as she observed Olivia. A girl like that wandering around here at this hour? She muttered to herself, conveniently ignoring that Elm Street bordered some of the nicer neighborhoods in the city. And that hairstyle definitely looks gang-related. Years on the force had shaped Rebecca's worldview in ways she didn't even recognize anymore. The endless parade of arrests, the constant pressure from superiors to show results, the daily immersion in the worst aspects of humanity, it had all slowly eroded her ability to see individuals rather than statistics. She no longer remembered when she'd started categorizing people based on appearances, when her instincts had become so tangled with prejudice that she couldn't tell them apart. Central Dispatch. This is Officer Hudson. She spoke into her radio. I'm conducting a stop on Elm Street, young female subject, suspicious activity. The dispatcher acknowledged her call with a crackle of static, and Rebecca flipped on her lights. She watched as Olivia noticed the flashing lights and moved to the side, clearly expecting the patrol car to pass by. The girl's confusion when the car stopped behind her was evident even from a distance. Rebecca took a moment before exiting her vehicle, studying Olivia through the windshield. What was a teenager doing out at this hour on a school night? The elaborate braids struck her as particularly suspicious. Similar styles had been noted in some of the reports about the East Side Crew, a gang that had been increasingly active in neighboring districts. The fact that Olivia was dressed in a formal white dress, clearly coming from some kind of event, didn't register as important to Rebecca. In her mind, the pieces she chose to see had already formed a picture, a potential troublemaker, possibly a gang affiliate, definitely someone who needed to be questioned. Rebecca slowed the car and after a few moments of deliberation, decided to pull over. The car's headlights shone directly on Olivia, causing her to stop in her tracks, temporarily blinded by the sudden brightness. Rebecca rolled down her window, her authoritative voice cutting through the night. "Stop right there. What are you doing out here at this hour?" Olivia turned, startled by the stern voice. She clutched the concert program tightly, as though it were a shield that could protect her from the officer's harsh tone. "I just finished a piano performance at the Madison Concert Hall," she replied, her tone gentle but cautious. "I live just a few blocks away." Rebecca ignored the explanation. It sounded rehearsed to her ears, too convenient. In her experience, kids caught doing something wrong always had a story ready. She opened the car door and stepped out, her posture exuding authority. Her boots struck the wet pavement with a heavy thud, echoing in the quiet night. "Let me see your ID," Rebecca demanded, her cold gaze scanning Olivia from head to toe, taking in the white dress now damp from the rain, the carefully braided hair, and the concert program in her hand. Olivia stepped back slightly, unease spreading through her. She spoke calmly, just as her father had taught her to do in situations with authority figures. "May I ask why, ma'am?" "I'm just walking home and haven't done anything wrong." Rebecca narrowed her eyes, displeased by Olivia's composure. The calmness only deepened her suspicion. In Rebecca's experience, innocence was usually accompanied by nervousness when confronted by the police. This girl's collected demeanor struck her as the confidence of someone accustomed to deceiving authorities. "Don't play games with me," Rebecca said icily, her hand moving to rest on her belt near her handcuffs. "That hairstyle don't tell me it's not gang-related. Do you think I don't know better?" Olivia stood still, trying not to show her emotions, but the baseless accusation tightened her chest. The hair her father had spent hours braiding that morning was now being judged as a symbol of criminal activity. The special style he had created for her concert, a crown of achievement and love, was being used against her by this officer who knew nothing about her life. "This is the hairstyle my father did for me this morning," she responded, her voice steady but tinged with a tremor. "It has nothing to do with gangs. I'm a piano student. I just played Chopin at Madison Hall." Rebecca was unsatisfied with the answer. In her mind, Olivia's explanation only confirmed her suspicions too smooth, too ready. She stepped closer, invading Olivia's personal space, a tactic she'd learned early in her career to establish dominance and break down resistance. "I'm going to need to see what's in your bag," Rebecca said, eyeing the small backpack hanging from Olivia's shoulder. "You're out past curfew in a high-crime area." What Rebecca didn't say, what she perhaps didn't even acknowledge to herself, was that Elm Street hadn't had a serious crime reported in over 3 years, and that the city's youth curfew applied only to those under 16, a fact she couldn't possibly know about Olivia without checking her ID first. The rain began to fall harder, blurring the scene in a haze of streetlights and shadow. For Olivia, the perfect evening was rapidly transforming into a nightmare. For Officer Rebecca Hudson, it was just another stop, another suspect, one she had already judged and convicted in her mind before a single word was exchanged. "I need to see inside your bag," Officer Hudson repeated, her tone hardening. Olivia clutched her backpack protectively. Inside were her sheet music, a bottle of water, her phone, wallet, and house keys. Nothing suspicious, nothing illegal, yet the way the officer was looking at her made her feel like a criminal. "Everything in my bag is just my sheet music and the program from my performance," Olivia explained, her voice beginning to waver despite her attempts to stay calm. "If they get wet, they'll be ruined. Please, I haven't done anything wrong." Rebecca's patience had worn thin. The rain was getting heavier, soaking through her uniform, and this girl was still arguing instead of complying. In Rebecca's mind, resistance equaled guilt. Last chance. Hand over the bag voluntarily, or we'll have a bigger problem, Rebecca warned, her hand now resting on her handcuffs. Olivia hesitated, torn between protecting her precious music sheets and avoiding further confrontation. I'm happy to show you what's inside, but could we please do this somewhere dry? The music is important to me. Rebecca interpreted the hesitation as defiance. With a swift motion, she snatched Olivia's backpack from her shoulder. Olivia instinctively reached for it, a reflexive action to protect her belongings. Obstructing an investigation. Rebecca barked, pulling out her handcuffs. If you don't cooperate, I'll have to take you to the station. Olivia felt a lump rise in her throat, but she refused to cry. She stood still, clutching the concert program as if it were the last thing she could protect. The rain began to fall harder, blurring the image of Olivia in her white dress and intricate braids. She stood there facing a representative of justice who was turning her perfect evening into a bitter memory of humiliation. In the distance, the streetlights continued to shine, but within Olivia, darkness was beginning to close in. This wouldn't end here. Rebecca grabbed Olivia's arm and led her toward the patrol car. The cold handcuffs clinked sharply in the damp air. Olivia bit her lip and followed, her steps heavy, her dream-filled night shattered beyond recognition. You don't understand. I didn't do anything wrong, Olivia said, her voice trembling but firm. Rebecca turned back, her cold eyes staring at the girl. Silence would be better for you, she replied, her lips pressed into a thin line as if refusing to accept any justification. The sound of passing car horns echoed faintly, and the dim lights from nearby houses only made the scene more desolate. Olivia's white dress, now soaked through, clung to her slender legs, a symbol of a shattered dream. What neither of them noticed was a man in a dark suit standing silently across the street, partially hidden by the shadow of a large oak tree. His face was sharp, his eyes piercing. His hands gripped an umbrella tightly, and a phone in his pocket had recorded everything. The storm wasn't just in the rain, but in the events about to sweep them all away. As Rebecca placed Olivia in the back of the patrol car, she glanced around the street. For a moment, she thought she saw someone watching, but when she looked more carefully, there was no one there. Dismissing it as a trick of the rain and shadows, she got into the driver's seat. The ride to the police station was silent. Olivia sat in the back, her handcuffed wrists resting in her lap, her mind racing. What would her father say? Would they call him? How long would she be held? The questions swirled like the raindrops on the window, each one adding to her anxiety. Rebecca occasionally glanced at her in the rearview mirror, still convinced she had made the right call. The girl's continued composure despite being arrested only reinforced Rebecca's suspicion. Most innocent people would be crying or begging by now. As they arrived at the station, the rain poured harder, soaking Olivia's white dress and the intricate braids her father had spent hours perfecting that morning. She sat hunched on a bench in the holding area of the police station, her eyes fixed on the damp, crumpled concert program lying on the floor. The proud lettering had smeared in the rain, a cruel reminder of the night's injustice. The sting of humiliation and unfair treatment tightened her throat, but she refused to cry. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Rebecca Hudson, the policewoman with cold eyes and a stiff demeanor, stood behind her desk filling out paperwork under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her rigid expression remained unchanged, as though her stern attitude were impenetrable. "This girl isn't cooperating," Rebecca muttered sharply, not bothering to glance at Olivia. That hairstyle definitely gang-related. Mike, a younger officer standing nearby, looked over at Olivia, his brow furrowed in hesitation. Before he spoke softly, "Rebecca, she's just a student. She doesn't seem like—" "Protocol is protocol," Rebecca interrupted curtly, cutting him off. "If we overlook these details, who knows what she might be involved in?" Rebecca turned toward Olivia, her cold gaze piercing. "I asked you to hand over your bag, and you refused. That's why I had to bring you in. Your lack of cooperation only strengthens my suspicion." Olivia met Rebecca's gaze with calm resolve, her large eyes steady and unflinching. Taking a deep breath, she responded, "I didn't do anything wrong. Everything in my bag is just my sheet music and the program from my performance. I was trying to protect them from the rain." Rebecca remained unmoved. She stepped forward and yanked Olivia's bag from beside her on the bench. Olivia instinctively reached out, but stopped herself, knowing it would only make things worse. "Obstructing an officer," Rebecca said again, as if the phrase justified everything. She opened the bag and dumped its contents onto the desk. Sheet music, now somewhat damp. A phone. A wallet. A water bottle. And a small cloth bag containing a hair tie and some bobby pins. Rebecca rifled through the items, her movements brusque and uncaring. She opened the wallet and examined Olivia's student ID from Westville Academy of Music, her library card, and the $20 she had in cash. There was nothing incriminating, nothing suspicious, exactly as Olivia had said. But Rebecca wasn't ready to admit she'd made a mistake. Instead, she focused on the phone, pressing the power button to access it. "Password?" she demanded. "You need a warrant to search my phone," Olivia said quietly. Her father had taught her about her rights, preparing her for a world that might not always see her fairly. Rebecca's eyes flashed with anger. "You were a minor taken into custody. I have every right to check your phone for your parents' contact information. My father's number is in my wallet," Olivia replied. "On the card behind my ID." Mike, who had been watching the exchange with growing discomfort, stepped forward. "Rebecca, let me call her parents. This is getting out of hand." But Rebecca had already made up her mind. This girl, with her calm demeanor and knowledge of her rights, was not going to make her look foolish. She had brought her in, and she was going to find something to justify it. "Put her in holding room 3, Rebecca ordered, gathering up Olivia's belongings and placing them in an evidence bag. "I'll finish processing her myself." As Mike led Olivia to the holding room, their footsteps echoed in the quiet station. The night shift was always understaffed, and tonight there were only a handful of officers present. No one questioned Rebecca's actions. She was a veteran officer known for her strict adherence to procedure, even if her interpretation of those procedures sometimes raised eyebrows. Olivia sat on a cold metal chair in the holding room, her dress still damp, her hair beginning to frizz from the rain. Her handcuffs had been removed, but the memory of their cold bite lingered on her wrists. The room was harshly illuminated by fluorescent lights, the oppressive brightness adding to the suffocating atmosphere. Through the small window in the door, she could see Rebecca at her desk, still filling out forms with mechanical precision. Beside her, Mike lingered, occasionally glancing toward the holding room, his expression betraying his discomfort with the situation. As Olivia sat waiting, she thought of her father. By now, he would be wondering where she was. They had agreed she would call when she was on her way home, but her phone was now in an evidence bag on Rebecca's desk. Would he be worried? Would he come looking for her? Little did she know that Marcus Wilson was already aware of everything that had happened, and a storm far more powerful than the rain outside was about to break over the Westville police station. Rebecca pulled another form from the stack and called out to a nearby desk officer, her voice cutting through the air. "Get the barber down here immediately. We need to address this hair situation. Mike's eyes widened as he stepped closer. "Rebecca, are you seriously going to do this? The girl isn't a criminal." This hairstyle could have gang affiliations. Rebecca interrupted him again. "Protocol requires us to eliminate any potential risk factors." Mike shook his head in disbelief, but knew arguing further would be pointless. Rebecca had invoked protocol, her shield against all questioning of her actions. He walked away, disgusted, but feeling powerless to intervene. Soon after, George, a middle-aged barber with salt and pepper hair and a gentle demeanor, entered the room with his tools. His kind eyes softened as they landed on Olivia, and his chest tightened. The young girl with her delicate features and unyielding gaze seemed so out of place in such a setting. She was nothing like anyone he'd ever been called to cut hair for in this context. "This young girl?" George asked, his voice tinged with hesitation and compassion. "Yes," Rebecca replied coolly. "Cut it all off. It's protocol." George hesitated, turning to look at Olivia. She sat motionless, her hands resting on her lap. When her eyes met his, they weren't pleading or defeated. They were calm, steady, and resolute. George stepped forward and placed a hand gently on Olivia's shoulder. He spoke softly. "I'm so sorry, dear. I don't want to do this, but I have no choice. I have to follow orders." Olivia raised her head, her voice calm but firm. "I understand. Go ahead. I'll be fine." George began his work, each snip of the scissors echoing sharply in the silent room. The intricate braids her father had lovingly crafted that morning fell to the floor one by one, each strand cutting into Olivia's dignity like a knife. George paused multiple times, his hands trembling with guilt, but Rebecca stood behind him, her cold gaze urging him to continue. Olivia kept her eyes fixed on the small mirror on the wall. She watched every strand fall, every piece of herself stripped away, but she didn't cry. Instead, she held her reflection steady, her eyes locked onto Rebecca's through the mirror, brimming with quiet defiance. Rebecca noticed the gaze and for a brief moment felt an unshakable unease. This wasn't the look of someone defeated. It was the look of someone who would never forget when the last braid fell to the ground. The room was engulfed in an unsettling silence. Olivia bent down and carefully picked up the fallen braids, cradling them in her lap as if they were treasures. George stepped back, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Rebecca turned and walked away, trying to ignore the growing knot of discomfort in her chest. But she couldn't shake the image of Olivia's unbroken spirit. What she didn't realize was that her actions had set something far larger in motion, something far beyond her control. Outside the holding room, Mike leaned against the desk, watching Rebecca with a look of quiet disappointment. He said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. Inside, Olivia remained seated on the cold metal chair, her cropped hair uneven and jagged, but her gaze steady, unyielding. She knew deep down that this was far from over. The room felt heavy with an eerie stillness. Olivia clutched the remnants of her braids tightly in her hands, holding on to what little remained of her dignity. Each time her eyes fell on the strands in her lap, she felt a piece of herself had been torn away in the cruelest way possible. Yet, something within her remained unbroken, a core of strength she hadn't known she possessed until this moment. Outside, Rebecca stood by her desk, staring into space. Her face betrayed nothing, but her thoughts were in turmoil. The image of Olivia, humiliated yet defiant, lingered in her mind like a haunting echo. Rebecca didn't know it yet, but this moment would change everything irreversibly. The front doors of the police station swung open with a loud crash, shattering the silence. Captain Thomas Reynolds entered with an authoritative presence, his every step echoing on the tiled floor. His sharp eyes scanned the room, intensifying the already suffocating tension. Officers quickly averted their gazes, pretending to busy themselves to avoid his scrutiny. Reynolds stopped in front of Rebecca Hudson's desk. "Hudson," he called, his deep voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Who did you bring in?" Rebecca, oblivious to the gravity in his tone, maintained her composed demeanor. "A girl," she said nonchalantly. She looked suspicious. "I caught her walking late at night in this area, and her hairstyle," Rebecca shrugged, attempting to mask her uncertainty. "I thought it might be gang-related." Reynolds' eyes narrowed, his brows knitting into a sharp frown. "What's her name?" he asked, his voice deliberate, tinged with warning. Rebecca shuffled through the file on her desk, scanning it. "Olivia Wilson," she replied. "A student, but protocol is protocol." The moment the name Olivia Wilson left her lips, Reynolds' expression changed completely. He leaned over her desk, planting his hands firmly, his piercing gaze filled with fury. "What did you just say?" he asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Olivia Wilson," Rebecca repeated, her voice faltering as the weight of the situation began to dawn on her. Reynolds exhaled sharply, his anger giving way to deep disappointment. Pulling out his phone, he swiped through his contacts with precision before bringing it to his ear. "Marcus, you need to get here now," he said curtly before hanging up, turning back to Rebecca. Reynolds' tone was cold and severe. "Do you have any idea what you've done, Hudson? Olivia Wilson isn't just any girl. She's the daughter of Marcus Wilson, a federal agent currently working one of the most dangerous undercover missions of his career." Rebecca froze, her eyes widening in shock. "The daughter of a federal agent?" she stammered. "That's right," Reynolds barked. "For the past 3 years, Marcus has been infiltrating Richard Jackson's network, one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country. Every ounce of progress he's made, every life hanging in the balance, could be destroyed because of your reckless actions." Rebecca's mind spun as she tried to explain. "I was just following protocol. The hairstyle. Do you think you had the right to cut an innocent girl's hair based on your ignorant assumptions?" Reynolds roared, slamming his hands on the desk. Nearby officers flinched at the sound. "You've just handed Jackson the perfect reason to suspect Marcus's loyalty." Reynolds sat down heavily, his face etched with stress. He pulled out a set of photos from a file and flung them onto the desk in front of Rebecca. "Look," he ordered grimly. "This is Jackson's network. He's not just dealing drugs, he's involved in human trafficking, arms smuggling, and money laundering. Men like him have an army of lawyers, corrupt cops, and even politicians in their pocket." Rebecca picked up one of the photos, her hands trembling. It showed Jackson standing next to Victor Stone, his right-hand man, whose cold, sharp eyes sent a chill down her spine. "Jackson is already suspicious of Marcus," Reynolds continued. "If he finds out Olivia is Marcus's daughter, not only is Marcus's life at risk, but so is his entire family." Rebecca's heartbeat thundered in her chest. She struggled to remain composed, but couldn't. I didn't know. I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to." Reynolds' voice dripped with sarcasm. "You think that excuses the consequences. If Jackson strikes, we'll lose our only chance to bring him down." The full weight of what she had done began to crash down on Rebecca. She had acted on bias, on assumption, on fatigue, and in doing so, she might have endangered not only an innocent girl, but a federal agent and his vital mission. As this realization dawned, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the hallway. Marcus Wilson had arrived, and the storm was about to break in full force. An hour later, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the hallway. Marcus Wilson entered, his dark suit pristine, but his eyes steely and cold. He strode directly toward the holding area where his daughter waited. When the door opened, he saw Olivia sitting quietly on a metal chair, her eyes weary but still resolute. The sight of her cropped hair, the beautiful braids he had crafted with such care now reduced to uneven tufts, made his jaw clench in barely controlled fury. "Olivia," Marcus said, his deep voice filled with worry. Olivia looked up, her eyes lighting up faintly at the sight of her father. "I'm okay, Dad," she whispered. "I'm strong." Marcus approached her, crouching down to her level. He gently touched the uneven stubble where her braids had been, his expression darkening with restrained rage. "I'll make this right," Marcus said firmly. Leaving the room, Marcus walked straight to where Rebecca stood, his gaze locked onto her, piercing and unrelenting. He studied her for a moment, as if reading every thought in her mind. "Officer Rebecca Hudson," he said, his voice low and menacing. "Do you understand the consequences of your actions?" Rebecca opened her mouth to respond, but the intensity of Marcus's stare silenced her. "I've spent 3 years building trust with Jackson and his men," Marcus continued, each word precise and cutting. "And because of your ignorant, prejudiced decision, he's starting to doubt me. If I die, if my daughter's hurt again, it's on you." Rebecca felt her legs weaken beneath her. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this," she stammered. Marcus raised an eyebrow, his gaze icy. "Fix it? You might not get that chance." Reynolds stepped forward, cutting into the exchange. "We'll address this later," he said. Turning to Rebecca, he added, "You're suspended, effective immediately. Marcus, focus on what comes next." Rebecca collapsed into a chair, feeling as though every ounce of strength had been drained from her body. Her hands trembled as she buried her face in them, her breath shallow and ragged with panic and regret. What had she done? The image of Olivia, her tear-filled yet defiant eyes, replayed in Rebecca's mind like an unending nightmare. Regret surged through her like a tidal wave, washing away every justification she had once clung to. Deep down, Rebecca knew her actions had not only deeply hurt Olivia, but had jeopardized an entire mission, a mission that had demanded years of sacrifice and unrelenting effort, now teetered on the edge of collapse because of a single moment of rash judgment. Pacing the room like a caged animal, Rebecca felt the weight of her decisions pressing down harder with each step. The walls seemed to close in on her, forcing her to confront the consequences of her actions. Every detail of the night replayed in her mind: the click of the handcuffs, the snip of the scissors, and Olivia's unwavering gaze of quiet defiance. "I was wrong," Rebecca whispered, her voice cracking. Her actions hadn't been about justice or investigation. They had been about satisfying her misplaced authority in a moment of weakness. In that instant, she had betrayed the very principles she had sworn to uphold. Standing by the window, Rebecca stared out at the faint glow of streetlights. The world outside continued as if nothing had changed, but for her, everything had. She had betrayed not only her duty, but also her humanity. There was no going back now. The only question was whether she could summon the courage to make amends, or if it was already too late. The ticking of the wall clock echoed in the room, each sound a reminder that time would not wait. But for Rebecca, every passing second felt like a lifetime of judgment, deepening the chasm of regret she would carry forever. Meanwhile, in Captain Reynolds' office, Marcus sat across from his old friend and superior, his posture rigid with controlled anger. "Thomas, this is beyond unacceptable," Marcus said, his voice low but intense. "My daughter was profiled, arrested, and humiliated because of her hair I braided for her concert." Reynolds nodded gravely. "I know, Marcus. Hudson will face disciplinary action, I assure you." "Disciplinary action isn't enough," Marcus replied. "The damage is done. We need to contain this situation before Jackson gets wind of it. What's your assessment? How close is he to making you?" Reynolds asked, shifting to the operational concerns. Marcus ran a hand over his face, the gesture revealing momentary fatigue before his professional mask returned. Too close for comfort. Last week, he had Stone follow me after a meeting. I managed to maintain my cover, but he's suspicious. If he connects me to Olivia and discovers she's been detained by police, it would look like you're cooperating with us. Reynolds finished the thought. Your cover would be blown instantly, and 3 years of work would be wasted, Marcus added. Not to mention the danger to Olivia. Reynolds leaned back in his chair, considering the options. We could accelerate the operation. Move on Jackson before he has time to react. Marcus shook his head. We're not ready. We don't have enough evidence to bring down the entire network. We'd get Jackson, maybe, but the organization would continue. Both men fell silent, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on them. Years of careful planning and risk-taking hung in the balance, all because of one officer's prejudice. Finally, Reynolds spoke. What about Hudson? She created this mess. A thoughtful expression crossed Marcus's face. Maybe she can help clean it up. What are you thinking? Reynolds asked, recognizing the look of a plan forming. Hudson's mistake might actually give us an opportunity, Marcus said. Jackson is always looking for corrupt cops to add to his payroll. If Hudson approached his organization, claiming to be disillusioned with the system, Reynolds' eyes widened. You want to send her in as an undercover asset? After what she did to Olivia? I don't want to, Marcus clarified, his voice hardening. But she might be our best option right now. Jackson doesn't know her. She has no connections to me on record. And she owes us. It's extremely risky, Reynolds warned. Hudson isn't trained for undercover work. Neither was I when I started, Marcus countered. And she has something I didn't have: desperate motivation to make things right. Reynolds considered this, drumming his fingers on the desk. I'll bring her in. Let's see if she has what it takes. As Reynolds left to summon Rebecca, Marcus remained seated, his thoughts turning to Olivia. His daughter had shown remarkable strength tonight, but he knew the emotional scars would run deep. The violation of having her hair forcibly cut hair that held such cultural and personal significance was not something easily overcome. Whatever happened next, Marcus vowed that Rebecca Hudson would face the consequences of her actions one way or another. Marcus found Olivia in a quiet corner of the station, wrapped in a blanket that Mike had provided. The younger officer had been kind to her, offering water and apologizing quietly for what had happened. Olivia sat with perfect posture despite everything, a trait she had inherited from her mother. Ready to go home, sweetheart? Marcus asked, his voice gentle now, all traces of the cold fury he had directed at Rebecca gone. Olivia nodded, rising to her feet. She still clutched the severed braids in her hands, unwilling to leave them behind. Marcus felt his heart break at the sight, but kept his expression calm and supportive. As they walked through the station, officers averted their eyes, shame evident in their postures. Marcus's reputation in law enforcement circles was legendary, a decorated FBI agent known for his integrity and skill. To see how his daughter had been treated under their roof was a collective embarrassment. In the car, Olivia finally spoke. They thought my hair was gang-related, Dad. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles turning white. There was nothing wrong with your hair, Olivia. What happened tonight had nothing to do with you and everything to do with Officer Hudson's prejudice. Will it grow back in time for the regional competition next month? Olivia asked, her voice small. The question so practical, so heartbreakingly ordinary amid the injustice she had faced, nearly undid Marcus's composure. It will grow, he assured her, though they both knew it wouldn't be long enough for the elaborate styles she typically wore for performances. And regardless of your hair, your music will be just as beautiful. When they arrived home, Olivia went straight to her room. Marcus stood in the hallway, listening as she quietly closed the door. No sobs, no outbursts, just dignified silence. In some ways, that worried him more than if she had broken down. His phone vibrated with a text from Reynolds. Meeting tomorrow. 0800. Bring your decision on Hudson. Marcus sighed deeply. Tomorrow would bring difficult choices, but tonight, his priority was his daughter. He knocked gently on her door. Olivia? Can I come in? A soft yes answered him. He opened the door to find Olivia sitting at her vanity mirror, running her hands over the short, uneven remains of her hair. It looks awful, she said. Meeting his eyes in the reflection, Marcus moved behind her, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. Nothing about you could ever be awful, Liv. Tomorrow, we'll go to Miss Jacinta's salon. She'll even it out, make it look intentional. You might even start a new trend. A ghost of a smile touched Olivia's lips, but quickly faded. Officer Hudson hated me on sight, didn't she? She didn't even know me. The question pierced Marcus's heart. How could he explain the ugly reality of prejudice to his daughter without dimming her beautiful spirit? Some people carry darkness inside them, Olivia. They see the world through a lens of fear and ignorance. What Officer Hudson did tells us everything about her character and nothing about yours. Olivia turned to face him. What will happen to her? That depends, Marcus said carefully. On what? Partly on what happens next with my case. Partly on her. Marcus paused, considering how much to share. And partly on you, if you want a say in it. Olivia considered this. I don't want revenge, Dad. I just don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone else. Marcus felt a surge of pride so intense it brought tears to his eyes. Even in her pain, his daughter thought of others. That's exactly the kind of thinking that makes you exceptional, Olivia. And I promise you, one way or another, Officer Hudson will learn from this night. He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the faint scent of the coconut oil he had used on her braids that morning a lifetime ago, it seemed. Try to get some rest. I'll be right down the hall if you need me. Double quotes. As Marcus left Olivia's room, his phone vibrated again. This time it was a secure message from his FBI handler. Urgent. Jackson called meeting of lieutenants tomorrow. Unusual security measures in place. Something's up. The timing couldn't be worse. If Jackson had somehow gotten wind of what happened tonight, Marcus's cover could already be compromised. He typed a quick response. Will attend. Proceeding with caution, then he added a message to Reynolds. Hudson decision made. Bring her to the 8 a.m. meeting. No guarantees. Marcus moved to his study, unlocking the hidden compartment in his desk where he kept his undercover credentials and the burner phone he used to communicate with Jackson's organization. If his operation was about to be exposed, he needed to be prepared for every contingency, including extracting himself and Olivia if things went south. The night stretched before him, full of potential dangers and difficult decisions. But one thing was certain. Rebecca Hudson was about to face the consequences of her actions in ways she never could have imagined. Rebecca received an urgent summons to meet Marcus at the police station early the next morning. She tried to maintain her composure, but every step toward the meeting room felt heavier than the last. The weight of her mistakes loomed over her like a storm cloud. As soon as she entered, Marcus's voice cut through the air. Do you understand what you've done, Hudson? He asked, his tone low and commanding. Rebecca's eyes dropped to the table. She couldn't bring herself to meet his piercing gaze. I know I messed up, she stammered, but I didn't think. You're right. You didn't think. Marcus interrupted, his voice thunderous. You didn't think about the consequences. You didn't think about my daughter's safety. You didn't think about the entire criminal network I've spent years trying to dismantle." Rebecca remained silent. She knew no excuse could undo her mistake. Marcus's expression wasn't just anger. It also carried a flicker of something else, a cold calculation, perhaps even a sliver of opportunity. He was giving her a chance to make it right. "You have an opportunity to redeem yourself," Marcus continued, his tone colder now, "but it won't be easy. I need you to do something I wouldn't trust anyone else to handle." Rebecca looked up, her eyes filled with both worry and curiosity. "What do you need me to do?" Marcus slid a file across the table, opening it to reveal photos of Victor Stone, Richard Jackson's ruthless and intelligent right-hand man. The man's eyes in the photograph seemed to pierce through Rebecca, hard and calculating. "After your actions, Jackson is starting to doubt me," Marcus explained. "He's probing every connection around me, including Olivia. If we don't act fast, he'll uncover my identity, and the entire mission will collapse." Marcus leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I need you to get close to Victor Stone and earn his trust." Rebecca's stomach churned, her heartbeat quickening. Victor Stone, the man they call the human lie detector? "You want me to approach him?" Marcus nodded. "You're the only one for this job. You're a cop, and after what you did to Olivia, Jackson will easily believe you're disillusioned with the system. If you can gain Victor's trust, you'll have a shot at reaching Jackson." Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. Victor Stone wasn't just dangerous. He was infamous for spotting deception in an instant. One wrong move, one misplaced word, and she'd be dead. But she also knew this might be her only chance to make amends. "And if I fail?" she asked, her voice shaky. Marcus's response was a hard stare. "If you fail, it's not just your life on the line. My life, Olivia's life, and countless innocent lives will pay the price." The reality of what Marcus was asking struck Rebecca like a physical blow. He wanted her to go undercover with no training, no preparation, into one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country. Even trained agents often didn't survive such assignments, but what choice did she have? Her actions had endangered Marcus's operation and traumatized his daughter. She owed them both a debt that couldn't be repaid with mere words. How would this work? Rebecca asked, already mentally preparing herself for what lay ahead. Captain Reynolds, who had been silently observing from the corner, stepped forward. "We'll establish your cover story. You've been suspended. That part is already true and verifiable. We'll leak information suggesting excessive force complaints in your record, create the impression that you've been passed over for promotion multiple times. The narrative will be that you're a cop who's fed up with the system," Marcus added. "Underpaid, underappreciated, and now suspended for doing your job. It's a story Stone and Jackson will find both believable and potentially useful." Rebecca nodded slowly. "And my approach. There's a bar on the east side called the Rusty Nail. Stone holds court there most evenings. You'll start showing up, making yourself visible, but not obvious. Drop hints about your situation, but don't approach him directly. Let him come to you. What if he doesn't?" "He will," Marcus said with certainty. "Jackson's organization is always looking for cops they can turn. Just by being there, you'll catch their attention." Rebecca took a deep breath, trying to process everything. This wasn't just about saving her career anymore. It was about lives, including her own. "When do I start?" she asked, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. "Tonight," Reynolds replied. "The sooner the better. Our tech team will set up your phone with a tracking app disguised as a fitness tracker. It'll look normal, but will allow us to monitor your location you'll be mostly on your own, Marcus warned. We can't risk direct contact once you're in. If you get in trouble, use the panic code in the app, but understand that even then, help might not arrive in time. The gravity of the situation settled over Rebecca. She was being asked to walk into the lion's den with little more than her wits to protect her. Yet, strangely, the danger ahead seemed fitting a chance to balance the scales for the harm she had caused. "I'll do it," she said finally, her voice firm despite her fear. "I owe it to your daughter. I owe it to you." Marcus studied her for a long moment, as if searching for any sign of weakness or deception. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him, because he nodded once, briskly. "Be at the Rusty Nail by 9 tonight. Dress the part, not a cop, but not trying too hard either. And Hudson," he added, his voice taking on an edge of warning, "if you betray this opportunity, there won't be anywhere you can hide from me." Rebecca met his gaze directly for the first time. "I understand. I won't let you down again." Double quotes. As she left the meeting, Rebecca felt a strange mix of terror and determination. Her life as she knew it was over, but perhaps this was her chance to become someone better than she had been before, someone who could make amends for her prejudice and cruelty. Tonight, she would take the first step into a new and dangerous world. But first, she had one more thing to do, something that had been weighing on her conscience since last night. She needed to write a letter of apology to Olivia Wilson. Rebecca stepped into a dingy bar on the outskirts of town, a known gathering spot for Jackson's network. The Rusty Nail lived up to its name: dim lighting, peeling vinyl booths, and the distinct smell of spilled beer and cigarettes. This was the kind of place cops usually entered with badges drawn, not as patrons. She wore a worn leather jacket and ripped jeans and had her hair tied up in a messy bun. Her look was carefully crafted to appear as a disillusioned, reckless cop, nothing like the pressed uniforms and severe ponytail that had been her daily appearance for 15 years. As she entered, all eyes turned toward her, scanning her from head to toe. She forced herself to remain calm, walking confidently to the bar and ordering a whiskey. She knew she needed to get Victor Stone's attention, but she couldn't afford to appear desperate. "Being a cop doesn't pay much, does it?" Rebecca said loudly enough for others to hear, taking a sip of her drink. "Too many rules, too little reward. I think it's time to start making some real money." From across the room, Victor looked up from his corner booth, his razor-sharp gaze locking onto Rebecca. She felt the intensity of his scrutiny, as though he were dissecting her every word and movement. Victor Stone was exactly as his photographs depicted him: lean, hawk-nosed, with eyes that seemed to calculate your worth as a commodity. For what felt like an eternity, Stone simply watched her. Rebecca maintained her act, nursing her drink, occasionally checking her phone with an annoyed expression, playing the part of someone waiting for a call that wouldn't come. Finally, he approached, sliding onto the bar stool beside her with casual grace that belied his dangerous reputation. "Who are you?" Victor asked, his voice low and menacing. He didn't bother with pleasantries. A man in his position didn't need to. Rebecca turned to face him, her expression neutral. "Hudson," she replied curtly. "Cop, but sick of the system. I heard you might be able to help me out." Victor's lips curled into a cold smile. "You think I trust anyone who walks in here and says they want to work with me?" Rebecca leaned forward, her tone firm. "I don't need you to trust me. I just need a chance to prove myself." Victor studied her, his gaze unyielding. He signaled the bartender, who placed another whiskey in front of Rebecca without a word. "Why now, Officer Hudson? What pushed you over the edge?" His question was casual, but Rebecca knew it was a test. She took a sip of the fresh drink before answering, the carefully constructed cover story ready on her lips. 15 years on the force. I've made 326 arrests. I've been stabbed twice and shot at 4 times. My reward? A suspension because some rich kid's daddy complained about how I handled his precious little girl. The lie came easier than she expected, woven with just enough truth to feel authentic. In reality, her suspension was well-deserved, her treatment of Olivia indefensible. But Victor didn't need to know that. There are lots of disgruntled cops, Victor pointed out. Most don't come looking for someone like me. Most don't have the balls, Rebecca countered, matching his cold stare. I'm not interested in whining about the system. I'm interested in making it work for me for a change. After a long, agonizing pause, Victor smirked and nodded. All right, I'll give you a chance. But remember, if you betray us, the consequences will be unpleasant. He stood, motioning for her to follow. Outside the bar, the cold night air bit at Rebecca's skin as she walked beside Victor. Her palms were sweaty despite the chill, but she forced herself to appear composed. Memories of her early days as a cop flooded back, moments when she'd been taught to judge people by appearances. Always distrust the kids with unusual hair, an older officer had once told her. They're always hiding something. Those toxic lessons had shaped Rebecca's instincts, leading her to see Olivia not as an innocent girl, but as a potential threat. Maybe I've been wrong all along, she muttered under her breath, the weight of her past biases pressing down on her. Victor led Rebecca to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Inside, a small room held a simple table and 2 chairs. He sat down and motioned for Rebecca to take the opposite seat. You said you want to work with us, Victor said, his voice cold and sharp. Convince me. Rebecca sat down, steadying her nerves. I'm a cop, but I'm done with the broken system. I can provide you with information investigation plans, raid schedules. In return, I want a cut of the profits. Victor stared at her, his suspicion evident. Why should I trust you? You could be a spy. Rebecca took a deep breath, her voice steady and unwavering. If I were a spy, you'd already be in cuffs. I'm not here to beg for trust. I'm here to work. She pulled out her phone and opened a document, a falsified police report that Reynolds had prepared for her. Drug Task Force is planning a sweep next Tuesday. These are the targets. She slid the phone across the table, watching Victor's face as he examined the information. His expression revealed nothing, but Rebecca could almost see the calculations happening behind his eyes. The intelligence she offered was real enough, though modified to ensure no actual police operations would be compromised. Victor narrowed his eyes, the tension in the room palpable. And what do you want in return? Besides money, protection, Rebecca said immediately. When this inevitably blows back on me, I want to know I have somewhere to go. Victor leaned back, studying her with renewed interest. Most cops in your position ask for money first. Money's worthless if you're dead or in prison, Rebecca countered. I'm thinking long term. This seemed to please him. After another moment of consideration, he nodded slowly. We'll see. For now, you'll work with Diego. Small stuff only. Prove yourself, and we'll talk about more. Significant arrangements, relief washed through Rebecca, though she kept her expression neutral. First hurdle cleared. There are rules, Victor continued, his voice hardening. You contact only Diego. You never come here unless called. You never ask questions about operations you're not directly involved in. Break any of these, and our arrangement and you will be terminated. Rebecca nodded her understanding. When do I start? You already have. Victor stood, signaling the end of the conversation. Diego will contact you tomorrow. Keep your phone on. Double quotes. As Rebecca left the warehouse, the cool night air felt like a blessing against her flushed skin. She had done it, infiltrated the first layer of Jackson's organization. But this was just the beginning. The real challenge lay ahead, maintaining her cover while gathering information that could help Marcus complete his mission. In her car, Rebecca activated the hidden tracking app, confirming her status was normal. No immediate danger, operation proceeding. She drove home through the quiet streets, her mind racing with the enormity of what she had undertaken. The apartment she returned to felt different, now like a temporary shelter, rather than a home. She knew that from this moment forward, nothing was truly safe or certain. She was living on borrowed time, walking a tightrope between two worlds. As she prepared for bed, Rebecca's thoughts turned to Olivia. The letter she had written earlier that day sat on her kitchen counter, sealed and addressed. Tomorrow, she would find a way to deliver it, a small step toward atonement, though she knew no words could truly make up for what she had done. Sleep was elusive that night, her dreams haunted by Victor's penetrating gaze and the memory of Olivia's quiet dignity as her braids fell to the floor. Soft sunlight streamed through the window of the Wilson family's modest home, casting pale streaks across the wooden floor. Olivia sat at the old piano in the living room, her delicate hands hovering over the keys. The uneven patches of her hair, once a source of anguish, had been shaped into a stylish pixie cut by Miss Jacinta, who had worked miracles with what remained after Officer Hudson's cruel order. Yet the deep emotional scars remained, simmering beneath the surface. Olivia had barely spoken since returning from the salon yesterday. Marcus had watched helplessly as his vibrant, talkative daughter retreated into silence, responding to questions with nods or single words. Before her sat a blank sheet of paper resting on the music stand, untouched by any notes. Olivia sighed, closing her eyes as she allowed the sounds within her mind to emerge. Her fingers began to move cautiously at first, producing tentative yet heartfelt notes. A melody took shape, a wordless piece starting with somber low tones that spoke of loss and humiliation. As the music evolved, brighter, higher notes wove their way in, expressing hope, resilience, and determination. The piece was unlike anything Olivia had played before, raw, emotional, unfiltered. Marcus Wilson stood quietly in the corner of the room, watching his daughter with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Olivia was more than just his child. She was a beacon of strength. Through her music, she was not only healing herself, but also telling her story in a language more powerful than words. When the final note faded, Olivia looked up, her eyes shimmering with a faint sadness, but also a newfound clarity. Turning to her father, she smiled gently. "They can take my hair, Dad," she said, her voice steady. "But they can't take my strength." Marcus walked over, resting a hand on her shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Olivia," he said softly. "You're not just strong. You're teaching me that no one can break you unless you let them." Olivia nodded, glancing back at the blank sheet on the music stand. She resolved to write down the piece she had just played, every note a testament to her journey through pain and recovery. "What will you call it?" Marcus asked, watching as she began to transcribe the melody. Olivia thought for a moment. "Resilience," she replied simply. A few blocks away, Rebecca Hudson sat in her car, parked under the dim glow of a street light. The faint yellow light illuminated her face, etched with tension and regret. The image of Olivia's defiant gaze in the holding cell haunted Rebecca whenever she closed her eyes. The crushing weight of guilt bore down on her more with each passing day. Rebecca couldn't escape the truth. Her actions had been wrong, not just in what she'd done, but in how she'd seen the world. Years as a cop had twisted her perspective, imprisoning her in prejudice and fear. She thought back to her early days on the force, when she was a young, idealistic recruit eager to make a difference. Slowly, the words of older officers began to warp her mindset. "Kids like that are never innocent," one of them had said. If they're not guilty yet, they will be. Those toxic lessons had embedded themselves in her, leading her to view Olivia not as a girl, but as a potential threat. Now, parked near the Wilson home, Rebecca's regret felt unbearable. She stepped out of the car, her legs trembling as she approached the house. Warm light spilled from the living room window, and through it, Rebecca saw Olivia seated at the piano. Rebecca froze, unable to step closer, watching from a distance as Olivia played. The music floated through the night, haunting and powerful a melody that spoke of both sorrow and resilience. Every note seemed to pierce Rebecca's heart, awakening emotions she hadn't felt in years. Olivia's new composition captured the pain of her recent experiences, but also her strength in rising above them. Rebecca's throat tightened as she remembered the uneven haircut and Olivia's unwavering gaze of defiance. At that moment, Rebecca realized that Olivia wasn't just a victim, she was an inspiration. And if this young girl could transform her pain into something beautiful, perhaps Rebecca could transform her shame into something meaningful. She placed the letter she'd written on the Wilsons' mailbox, her hand lingering for a moment on the envelope. It wasn't enough, she knew that. No words could undo what she had done. But it was a beginning, an acknowledgement of her wrongs, and a promise to do better. As Rebecca walked back to her car, the melody from Olivia's piano continued to follow her, a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and of the long road to redemption that lay before her. Back in her apartment, Rebecca opened her laptop and began researching Jackson's organization more thoroughly. Her mission wasn't just about saving Marcus's operation now. It was about protecting Olivia and making amends for her actions. With each piece of information she gathered, with each risk she took, she would try to balance the scales of justice that she herself had tipped. Night cloaked Jackson's warehouse in darkness, the faint glow of industrial lights barely cutting through the suffocating air of danger. This was the heart of a sprawling criminal empire, a hub for drug trafficking, arms deals, and other illicit activities. Tonight would also be the stage for the final confrontation, a battle fraught with unpredictable risks and sacrifices. In the FBI's briefing room, Marcus Wilson and his team of agents prepared for the raid. A large map of the warehouse was spread across the table, and each team member listened intently as roles were assigned. Rebecca Hudson stood in a corner, her face tense, but her eyes burning with determination. She knew her part in this mission was critical, not just to correct her mistakes, but to protect the people she had hurt. Over the past 3 weeks, Rebecca had worked her way deeper into Jackson's organization. What had started as small assignments delivering messages, keeping watch during meetings, had evolved into more significant responsibilities. Diego, her direct contact, had been impressed by her efficiency and apparent loyalty. More importantly, Victor Stone had begun to trust her with sensitive information. The intelligence she had gathered had been invaluable, providing Marcus and the FBI with details they could never have obtained otherwise: security protocols, shipment schedules, and most crucially, the location of Jackson's private office where incriminating documents were kept. Marcus pointed to a red circle marked on the warehouse map, his voice firm and authoritative. "Thanks to the intel from Hudson, we know Jackson will be here tonight. He's holding a meeting with his partners to expand his network. This is our one chance to capture him and dismantle his operation." The team nodded silently, their expressions resolute. Rebecca stepped forward, her voice steady. "I'll go in first and keep Victor Stone distracted. I'll also pinpoint Jackson's exact location." Marcus studied her for a moment, his gaze a mix of concern and trust. "Hudson, are you sure? It's going to be dangerous inside, especially if Victor suspects you." Rebecca nodded firmly. "I've come this far. I'm not stopping now." Taking a deep breath, Marcus addressed the team. "We'll split into 3 groups. Hudson will signal when it's time to strike. Be prepared for anything. This isn't just an arrest. It's a battle. As the briefing concluded, Rebecca felt a strange calm settle over her. The past weeks had been a constant struggle, balancing her undercover role with her true purpose. She had witnessed crimes she couldn't prevent, heard plans she couldn't stop, all to maintain her cover until this moment. In a private moment before they departed, Marcus approached her. "You've done good work, Hudson. Whatever happens tonight, remember that." Rebecca didn't miss the qualification in his words. Whatever happens, they both knew the risks. Her cover could be blown at any minute. Victor Stone's reputation for sensing deception wasn't exaggerated. She had seen it firsthand when he had identified a lying supplier with chilling accuracy. "How's Olivia?" Rebecca asked, her voice softer now. A flicker of warmth crossed Marcus's face. "She's strong. Her new piece, Resilience, she's performing it at the regional competition next week." Rebecca nodded, feeling a stab of emotion. "I'm glad. She deserves that moment. She got your letter," Marcus added, watching Rebecca's reaction carefully. "She didn't say much about it, but she kept it." Before Rebecca could respond, Reynolds entered the room. "It's time. Communications check, everyone." The moment for personal reflections was over. Now came the culmination of weeks of deception and danger. Rebecca checked her concealed wire and the small signal device disguised as a fitness tracker on her wrist. One press of the button would alert the FBI teams surrounding the warehouse. As they prepared to depart, Rebecca thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a moment of cruel prejudice to risking her life for justice, it wasn't redemption. Not yet, but it was a step toward it. In the parking lot outside, agents dispersed to their vehicles. Rebecca would drive to the warehouse alone, maintaining her cover until the last possible moment. As she slid behind the wheel, she caught Marcus watching her, his expression unreadable. They both knew that despite all the planning, despite all the precautions, the next few hours would be unpredictable and dangerous. People would likely die tonight. Rebecca could only hope she wouldn't be among them, not before she had fully made amends for what she had done. Starting her car, Rebecca drove into the night, toward a warehouse filled with criminals who would kill her without hesitation if they discovered her true purpose. The weight of her gun pressed against her side, a cold reminder of the thin line between survival and disaster that she would walk tonight. Dressed in plain but sturdy clothing, Rebecca entered the warehouse, her familiarity with the environment keeping her movements confident. The air was charged with tension as members of the organization bustled about, checking goods and exchanging whispered conversations. Victor Stone stood in the center, exuding authority, like a general on a battlefield. His sharp eyes scanned the room, assessing every detail. When he spotted Rebecca, a faint smirk tugged at his lips, though his gaze remained cold and suspicious. "Hudson," he called out, his voice low and commanding. "You're just in time. We need to do a final check before this shipment moves out." Rebecca maintained her composure and approached him with a nod. She knew that any hesitation could give her away. As she pretended to inspect the goods crates that she knew contained illegal weapons bound for the West Coast, her hand slipped into her pocket to activate the signal device for Marcus and the FBI team outside. "Everything looks ready," she reported, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Security teams in position?" Victor nodded. "North and south entrances covered. East is maintenance only. Diego has 2 men there." Rebecca mentally noted this information. East entrance was the weakest point, exactly as she had reported to Marcus. "Their plan was on track. Jackson wants to see you," Victor added, his eyes studying her reaction. "He was impressed with how you handled the situation with those cops last week." Rebecca's heart rate spiked, but she kept her expression neutral. She had never met Richard Jackson face to face. This was both an opportunity and a danger. About time, she replied with just the right amount of confidence and respect. Where is he? Office upstairs. He's finishing a call. Give him 5 minutes. Rebecca nodded and moved toward a stack of crates, pretending to double-check their contents while surreptitiously scanning the warehouse. She counted 18 men, all armed, positioned throughout the space. Most were focused on the shipment, but 3 were clearly security, their attention directed outward. Nathan and his team received Rebecca's signal. Speaking into his radio, Marcus issued the order: move in from multiple directions. Priority targets are Jackson and Stone. Hudson is on site. Identify before engaging. The FBI team stormed the warehouse. The large doors were blown open, and shouts filled the air. FBI. Don't move. Chaos erupted. Gunfire cracked through the building as agents engaged the criminals who chose to fight rather than surrender. Rebecca tried to keep Victor occupied by asking questions about the shipment, but his instincts soon kicked in. What are you up to, Hudson? Victor growled, pulling a gun from his waistband. Rebecca took a steadying breath, keeping her voice calm. Just doing my job. Victor's sharp gaze pierced through her, realization dawning in his eyes. You're with them, he snarled, raising his gun toward her. Before he could pull the trigger, Marcus and his team burst in through a side entrance. Drop the gun, Stone, Marcus shouted. Victor spun around, aiming at Marcus in that split second. Rebecca made a decision. She lunged at Marcus, pushing him out of the bullet's path. The gunshot rang out, and Rebecca felt a searing pain tear through her shoulder as she fell to the ground. Blood seeped through her shirt, but Rebecca remained conscious, her eyes fixed on Victor, who was now backing toward the stairs, likely heading for Jackson. Go, she gasped to Marcus. Get Jackson. I'll be fine. Marcus hesitated for only a moment before barking orders to his team. Team 2, with me. He pointed to another agent. Mendez, stay with Hudson. Get medical here now. Agent Mendez nodded, kneeling beside Rebecca while calling for paramedics. Rebecca gritted her teeth against the pain, pressing her hand against the wound to slow the bleeding. Victor's heading upstairs to Jackson, she managed to say. Office at the end of the hall. 2 guards usually posted outside. Mendez relayed this information through his radio as he applied pressure to Rebecca's wound with a field dressing from his tactical vest. Marcus and his team pursued Victor up the stairs and down a corridor to a small room where Richard Jackson was hastily attempting to destroy critical documents. The room became a battleground as Victor, cornered but unyielding, fought back with ferocity. Despite his desperate resistance, Nathan and his team overpowered him. Meanwhile, Jackson was apprehended by another agent. Shackled in handcuffs, he smirked coldly. You think arresting me changes anything? I have people everywhere, Jackson taunted. Marcus didn't flinch at the threat. He met Jackson's gaze with a steely expression and replied, We'll handle the rest. For now, shut up. With the warehouse under control and the leaders of the organization in custody, Marcus hurried back to Rebecca. She lay on the ground, her shirt soaked with blood, but her eyes remained open, glinting with unwavering determination. Hudson, are you okay? Marcus's voice cracked as he knelt beside her. Rebecca offered a faint, weak smile. I promised no more failures. I did it, didn't I? Marcus gripped her hand tightly, his voice filled with emotion. You've done better than anyone could have, Hudson. You saved me. You saved the mission. Rebecca's vision began to blur at the edges, the pain giving way to a dangerous numbness. Tell Olivia. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her But Marcus couldn't hear the rest as Rebecca slipped into unconsciousness. The paramedics arrived, working quickly to stabilize her before transferring her to a stretcher, BPs dropping. One of them reported, "We need to move now." An ambulance soon arrived to take Rebecca to the hospital. Marcus watched as she was loaded into the vehicle, his heart swelling with gratitude and respect. Whatever her initial mistakes, Rebecca Hudson had risked everything to make things right. As the ambulance doors closed, Marcus turned back to the warehouse, where FBI agents were leading a procession of handcuffed criminals to transport vehicles. Jackson and Stone were kept separate from the others, their fate sealed by the evidence recovered from the office and the testimony Rebecca would provide if she survived. Marcus pulled out his phone, dialing a number he knew by heart. "Hey, sweetheart," he said when Olivia answered. "It's over. We got them. Dad, are you okay?" Olivia's voice was tight with worry. "I'm fine. Officer Hudson. She saved my life." There was a pause on the line. "Is she?" "She's hurt but fighting. Listen, I'll be home as soon as I can. I love you, Olivia. Love you too, Dad. Be safe. As Marcus ended the call, he looked up at the night sky, stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. The operation was a success. Jackson's network would be dismantled, countless lives saved from the poison he peddled. But the cost had been high, and the final bill was still being tallied in an ambulance racing toward Mercy Hospital. A few days later, Rebecca woke in a hospital bed to find Marcus and Olivia standing by her side. The steady beep of monitors filled the otherwise quiet room, and sunlight streamed through partially closed blinds. For a moment, Rebecca thought she might be dreaming, especially when she saw Olivia's expression. It was soft and kind, different from the guarded look she had worn before. "Welcome back," Marcus said, his voice gentler than Rebecca had ever heard it. "You gave the doctors quite a challenge." Rebecca tried to speak, but her throat was dry. Olivia reached for a cup of water with a straw, offering it to her with steady hands. After taking a sip, Rebecca found her voice. "Jackson? Stone?" she asked, priorities still focused on the mission. "Both in custody," Marcus assured her. "The evidence we recovered from Jackson's office is enough to put them away for decades. Your testimony won't even be necessary, though it would strengthen the case." Rebecca nodded, relieved. Then her eyes shifted to Olivia, taking in the stylish pixie cut that had replaced the jagged remains of her braids. "Your hair. It looks nice," she managed to say. Olivia's lips curved in a small smile. "Miss Jacinta said it suits my face shape. I'm thinking of keeping it short for a while." The simple, normal exchange nearly undid Rebecca. Here was the girl whose dignity she had stripped away, standing by her hospital bed, offering water, making small talk about hairstyles. The surreality of it brought tears to her eyes. "Thank you," Olivia said quietly but firmly. "You saved my dad. You proved that anyone can change." Rebecca's smile was weak but sincere. "No, Olivia. You changed me. Your strength. It's something I'll always remember." Marcus placed a comforting hand on Rebecca's shoulder. "Hudson, you've redeemed yourself in ways no one can question. You've saved lives, including your own." As a tear rolled down Rebecca's cheek, she realized that her long and painful journey had brought her back to herself, to the person she had wanted to be when she first joined the police force. Before prejudice and cynicism had twisted her purpose, "The doctors say you'll make a full recovery," Marcus continued. "The bullet missed any vital structures. You'll need physical therapy, but you'll regain full function of your arm." Rebecca nodded, relieved by the news even as exhaustion pulled at her. "What happens now?" she asked, uncertain of her future. Her career as a police officer was surely over, regardless of her heroism during the raid. "That's partly up to you," Marcus replied. The FBI is impressed with your work. Reynolds put in a good word, too. There might be opportunities if you're interested. Rebecca looked surprised. After what I did, people deserve second chances when they earn them, Marcus said simply. And you've more than earned yours, Olivia, who had been quiet, spoke up. I'm playing resilience at the competition tomorrow. It would be nice if you could be there. Her voice was hesitant, but sincere. Rebecca felt something warm bloom in her chest, not just gratitude for the invitation, but a profound appreciation for the compassion it represented. I'd like that, she said softly. I'd like that very much. Marcus checked his watch. We should let you rest. The doctors said not to tire you out. Double quotes. As they prepared to leave, Rebecca called out, Olivia. The girl turned, her expression open. Thank you. For the letter, for being here, for everything. Olivia nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself, she said with wisdom beyond her years. Don't forget that part. After they left, Rebecca lay in the hospital bed, reflecting on Olivia's words. The physical pain of her wound was significant, but it paled compared to the emotional journey she had undergone. From her hospital window, she could see a portion of the city's skyline, the same city she had once patrolled with rigid righteousness and hidden prejudice. It looked different now, or perhaps she was the one who had changed. A nurse entered to check her vital signs, smiling kindly. You're doing well, she reported. Dr. Kim says you're healing faster than expected. When can I leave? Rebecca asked. Not for a few days yet. But we can arrange for a wheelchair if you'd like to attend an event tomorrow. A Mr. Wilson called to ask about the possibility. Rebecca smiled, touched by Marcus's thoughtfulness. Yes, there's a piano recital I wouldn't miss for anything. As the nurse left, Rebecca gingerly reached for the small notebook Marcus had brought her. In it, she began to write not a formal statement about the case, but her personal journey from prejudice to understanding. Perhaps someday, her story might help other officers avoid the mistakes she had made. Outside her window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. It was beautiful in a way Rebecca hadn't noticed in years. Perhaps that was the first step in her healing, learning to see beauty again, in the world and in people. For the first time in what felt like forever, Rebecca Hudson fell asleep with a sense of peace, knowing that tomorrow would bring not just pain and recovery, but music and perhaps even friendship. The next morning, soft sunlight filtered through the window, illuminating the small room where Rebecca Hudson was packing the last of her belongings at the police station. Each item she placed into the box brought back memories, a badge that once symbolized her ideals, a notebook from her early days on the force, and a team photo she had once cherished like family. But now, Rebecca understood it was time to leave, not only to atone for her past, but to begin anew. In Captain Reynolds' office, she placed her resignation letter on the desk, her expression resolute though tinged with emotion. Reynolds picked up the letter, reading it slowly before looking up at her. Are you sure about this, Hudson? He asked, his voice serious. You just redeemed yourself from a major mistake. Frankly, the team needs someone like you, someone who understands the flaws in this system and can help change it from within. Rebecca shook her head gently, a bittersweet smile gracing her face. Captain, I've thought about this a lot. I'm no longer the right person for this role. Being a cop has taught me so much, but I need to step away from the shadows of the prejudices this job once fostered in me. I want to start fresh, from the ground up, by helping the people I've hurt. Reynolds remained silent for a moment, then set the letter down on his desk. I respect your decision, Hudson, and I hope you know that your actions during the last mission proved your courage and your capacity for real change. Don't ever forget that. Rebecca nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. As she walked out of the office, she carried with her a sense of both relief and determination. From this point forward, she would no longer wear the badge, but she would embark on a new journey, a journey of redemption and service. Meanwhile, Olivia Wilson's music career continued to flourish. After a successful performance of Resilience at the regional competition with Rebecca watching from a wheelchair in the audience, her name began to spread far and wide. Her story, a young woman overcoming adversity and transforming pain into strength, became a source of inspiration for thousands. At every performance, Olivia didn't just play music. She shared her story. "Music is how I heal," she said in an interview, "and I hope it can help others find strength within themselves." At one major concert, Olivia debuted a new composition she had written. The opening notes, gentle yet powerful, recounted her journey from pain and humiliation to resilience and forgiveness. As the final notes faded, the audience sat in stunned silence before erupting into thunderous applause that lasted minutes. Sitting in the front row, Marcus Wilson watched his daughter with pride shining in his eyes. He knew that Olivia had not only overcome her struggles, but had transformed them into something beautiful, inspiring those around her. One afternoon, as Olivia returned home, she found an envelope neatly placed on the table. Her name was written on it in careful handwriting. Inside was a letter from Rebecca Hudson. "Olivia, I know that sometimes apologies aren't enough, but I still want to say how deeply sorry I am for what happened. I acted unfairly, letting my prejudices guide me, and caused you pain that you didn't deserve. There is no excuse for that. But I also want you to know that you changed me. Your resilience and courage forced me to confront myself and the mistakes I once refused to acknowledge. You've taught me that true strength doesn't come from power, it comes from compassion and forgiveness. I've resigned from my position to start over. I'm now dedicating myself to community work, and I hope that through my actions, I can begin to make amends. Thank you for not letting me destroy who you are. You've inspired me to become a better person. Wishing you success and happiness, Rebecca Hudson." Olivia folded the letter and placed it gently on her piano. She stared at it for a long moment, a mixture of emotions welling up inside her. Relief, gratitude, and a sense of closure. While the past couldn't be undone, she felt a part of the burden she'd carried had been lifted. A few weeks later, at the community center where Rebecca had begun working, she was leading a group of teenagers in a workshop about overcoming adversity. Many of the teens had faced similar challenges to Olivia's, often unfairly judged or labeled. Rebecca listened intently to their stories, using her own experiences to help them find hope and self-confidence. Suddenly, Rebecca noticed a familiar figure standing in the doorway. Olivia. Her heart raced, but she steadied herself. After the session ended, Olivia approached her, expression calm but kind, with a faint smile. "Thank you for the letter," Olivia said. "I don't hate you. I'm glad you've changed." Rebecca felt her throat tighten. "Olivia, thank you. You've given me a chance to make things right." "I'll never forget that." For a moment, they stood in silence, not a silence of distance, but one of understanding. Though their paths were different, they both felt that the wounds of the past had turned into lessons for the future. Emily continued her musical journey, performing across the country and using her story to inspire others. She composed new pieces that carried messages of resilience, forgiveness, and the power of human connection. Rebecca, on the other hand, remained steadfast in her work at the community center. She organized workshops, mentored youth, and rebuilt trust within the community. Her efforts weren't just about helping others. They were about proving to herself that she could change. Though their journeys diverged, both Olivia and Rebecca carried with them a shared understanding. Resilience and forgiveness had the power to transform lives, not just their own, but those of countless others. One day, Olivia visited the community center with an unexpected proposal. "The center needs a music program," she said, as she and Rebecca walked through the building. "These kids need a way to express themselves, to find their voice like I found mine." Rebecca considered this. "We don't have funding for instruments or a teacher." "I can help with that," Olivia offered. "I have connections through the music school, and my recent performances have given me some influence. And I could teach at least once a week." Rebecca looked at her in surprise. "You'd do that?" "After everything." Olivia nodded, her expression serene. "Especially after everything. What happened to me was painful, but look what grew from it. These kids deserve the same chance to transform their pain into something beautiful." Within months, the music program was thriving. Children who had never touched an instrument were creating melodies that expressed their hopes and struggles. Olivia's weekly lessons became a highlight for everyone at the center, including Rebecca, who often sat in the back of the room, watching the transformation with quiet joy. One afternoon, a shy girl named Maya approached Olivia after class. "My friend got arrested last week," she said softly. "The police cut her hair too. I told her about you, about your music. Can I bring her here?" Olivia glanced at Rebecca, who had overheard. Their eyes met in silent communication. The cycle could be broken, one story, one melody at a time. "Bring her tomorrow," Olivia said gently to Maya. "We'll be waiting." Later, as they prepared for a small recital featuring the kids, Rebecca paused and turned to Olivia. "I don't know how to thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here doing this." Olivia met Rebecca's gaze with a gentle look. "Miss Hudson, I think we're both trying our best. What matters is that we don't stop." Olivia's words struck a chord with Rebecca. Despite the gulf that had once separated them, they had become a team, working together to bring positive change to their community. That evening, the children performed their pieces in front of a cozy, supportive audience. Olivia played alongside them, her presence a reassuring guide. Rebecca stood at the back, cheering for each child as they stepped onto the stage. When the recital ended, the room erupted in applause. Rebecca and Olivia exchanged smiles, each feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. What had begun as pain and conflict between them had blossomed into something beautiful, a shared commitment to healing and hope. The community center became a beacon of positive change in the neighborhood. Stories of Rebecca and Olivia's journey spread, inspiring others to reflect on their capacity for growth and forgiveness. Rebecca was no longer just someone seeking redemption. She had become a guide, helping teenagers envision brighter futures. Olivia, as both an artist and a teacher, didn't just share music, she planted seeds of belief in every child she worked with, showing them that they could overcome life's obstacles. Rebecca and Olivia understood that they couldn't change the entire world, but they could make a difference in the lives of those around them. And for them, that was more than enough. Together, they had turned a painful chapter into a story of growth and hope. Their work at the community center was proof that even the deepest wounds could lead to meaningful change, not just for themselves, but for everyone they touched. Rebecca and Olivia, once on opposite sides, had forged a new path together, a path of forgiveness, resilience, and optimism. Their shared journey not only healed their past, but also laid the foundation for a brighter future for countless others. What do you think about Olivia's decision to forgive and Rebecca's transformation? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to spread the message. See you in the next story. Officer James Miller sat in his patrol car on a quiet Thursday afternoon, sipping his now cold coffee from the local diner. His eyes narrowed as he watched the steady flow of traffic along Oak Street, one of the main roads connecting the suburbs to the city's medical district. After 15 years on the force, he had developed what he called his instincts, what others might recognize as something far more troubling. The digital clock on his dashboard read 2:45 p.m. when a sleek black Mercedes caught his attention. Behind the wheel sat a young black woman, with another who looked identical in the passenger seat. Both were dressed in what appeared to be medical scrubs beneath their coats. Miller's jaw tightened. In his mind, something didn't add up. Too nice a car for this neighborhood, he muttered to himself, conveniently forgetting about the row of million-dollar homes just 2 blocks away. Without hesitation, he pulled out behind the Mercedes, running the plates before flipping on his lights. The Mercedes signaled and pulled over smoothly, stopping in a perfect position well off the main road. Miller noticed how the driver placed both hands on the steering wheel. Clearly, she knew the drill. This made him even more suspicious. As he approached the vehicle, Miller took his time, making the occupants wait. He noticed their hospital ID badges hanging from the rearview mirror, but chose to ignore them. The driver's window was already rolled down. "License and registration," he barked, not bothering with the usual greeting. "Of course, officer," the driver responded calmly. "I'm Dr. Sarah Carter, and this is my sister, Dr. Rachel Carter. We're trauma surgeons at City General, and we're actually on our way to—" Miller cut her off. "Did I ask for your life story?" License and registration. Little did he know that this routine traffic stop would change his life forever.